This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
This episode is bonus content only for subscribers to the Deep State Radio Network. I wish everything in the world could be free, but becoming a member isn't expensive and has many benefits, including ad-free listening and bonus content on all the Deep State Radio podcasts. We know not everyone is able to pay for a subscription, so do what you can.
Welcome to The Secret Life of Cookies, where we try to solve the world's problems through the miracle of carbohydrates, one recipe at a time, with host Marissa Rothkopf and her dog, Bosco.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Secret Life of Cookies. As Bosco snoozes after an early morning, very sniffy walk in the woods, I am here in the kitchen with Anushay Hossain. The topic is women's health, her book, The Pain Gap, and it's a must listen, whether you are a woman or no one. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoy it. Hello and welcome to Anushay Hossain. Welcome to The Secret Life of Cookies. It is wonderful to have you here today. I think we should start with a little bit of levity because I think that's really the only way we can make it through all of this, because otherwise chapters of this book kept me up at night. So there you go. And have not left me since. And not in a good way, but in a good way, if you know what I mean. Everybody must read this book. I'm going to say that continuously, repetitively throughout this podcast. So the other thing is, it's not just that you are a journalist and a commentator on CNN and that you've written this brilliant book, but you're also willing to cook with me in your office. This is the first person, everybody, who is cooking here from her home office because she's getting her kitchen renovated. And she is willing to take on the task with paper plates, a carton of ice cream, and some cookies, which are homemade because sometimes that's what you got to do. We are here, we're making ice cream sandwiches because it's methodical and soothing and a little bit fiddly, which is a good thing to have as a sort of occupational therapy, I think, while we're talking about your book. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I've never done this before, by the way. This is the first kind of interview I've done like this. Usually I'm scarfing down food so nobody can tell I've eaten, but this is like, yeah, this is me.
This is you. I am making ice cream sandwiches with Oreo Thins, which is the best Oreo. And I'm not arguing with anybody about that. It is the best Oreo.
But that was kind of icing. Okay, fine. We're not debating. It's not up for discussion.
We're not going to debate this, but it's just such a perfect thing. And I'm actually putting mint chocolate cookie ice cream between the sandwiches and then rolling it in chocolate chips.
Really good. I chose these and they're limited edition, but they're Tate's and they're blueberry crisp cookies. Ooh. And yeah, they're new. And you know what? They're shockingly good. My kids don't like them, but hey, more power to me. And then I decided with the pistachio ice cream because we love pistachio ice cream in this house. This is a new one with like extra thick, rich cream. But sometimes you know how you put those weird combinations together and they taste good. So I thought maybe this would be one of those moments.
I think it's going to be one of those moments. And I also think going all like fruit forward in the summer is a great thing.
Yes, fruit forward.
Those are phrases I love using as a food writer. Yeah, where are we going? It's very fruit forward. So once upon a time, a couple of years ago, you sat down to write a book called The Pain Gap. I'll just give it all away by reading the subtitle for people who have not had the chance to read the book yet, which is How Sexism and Racism in Healthcare Kill Women, which sort of sets the scene for the book kind of perfectly. And I don't know whether to start with today or yesterday. In other words, why you wrote this book, or, oh my God, here we are today. But let's just talk quickly while we're gently putting ice cream between two cookie pieces and pressing them together.
My knife is because it's going to melt. I don't want to be rude.
You don't want to be rude.
Kind of smeared it like a peanut butter and jelly toast, though.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So once upon a time, let's set the scene. You grew up in Bangladesh with a very like feminist, active mother, very pro-feminist father, and then come to the United States, find yourself pregnant in the greatest nation in the world. And then what happened?
I love that you skipped that. You went right to that. Yeah. So I grew up and then I came to the States and I got pregnant. Well, I went to college in between those years. Young ladies.
Yeah. Make sure you
don't just leave your parents' house and go get pregnant. I went to college. I went to UVA, worked my ass off. I always wanted to write a book, but as you know, after you write a book, it's never the book you think it's going to be, right? If you had told me like 20 years ago that I would have written Bangladeshi born woman would have written a book on, critiquing American healthcare and telling American women, what needs to be done. Like I never would have imagined or believed it. But what's even crazier was that I was working in this healthcare space. So after I graduated from college, I was lobbying in Capitol Hill on global health legislation. I was a feminist policy analyst. So it was crazy that I'm in this world of, reproductive health and rights. And then I go to give birth in, one of the top hospitals in Washington, and I almost died in childbirth. And that entire experience, even though, you know how it is, Marissa, we have so much language now that we didn't even like 10 years ago. So these things like medical gaslighting and these deeply rooted birth trauma, all these kind of language and words that we have now, we really didn't then. So I really was one of those women who's just like, did I imagine this or was this really effed up? Mm-hmm. Even now when people come and tell me my story, I'm like, was it that bad? Was it that traumatic? And this is when it's so important to have kind of like a great partner, because my husband is always there kind of like, yes, it was terrible. Remember XYZ. So women even doubt, sometimes we don't even believe ourselves. Initially, I wanted it to be all about America's maternal health crisis, because I was kind of just like, what is happening? And why is this happening? Because it's not for lack of resources, funding, money, knowledge, medical expertise, none of that stuff. So I really was really focused on why America has more women die giving birth in America than any other rich developed country. And the number is increasing. And there's a really massive, unignorable, undeniable racial factor to this, but it's not the racial factors that you would think. So I started writing this book right at the start of COVID. Mm-hmm. And when COVID kind of exploded and we all went into lockdown like February, March 2020, I was getting ready to write my book. And my agent was like, I don't know if people really want to hear another story about another public health crisis. And I don't feel confident about this book anymore. And I was like, oh, COVID is not going to come to America. No. Oh my God. So that happened. But it's so funny because I couldn't have written this book in many ways without COVID, because it sounds like a doom and gloom book, but it's actually not. I'm so hopeful about women's health because we already have the tools. We already have the knowledge. We already have the expertise. It's not cancer or AIDS. It's a solvable issue. It shouldn't need to be an enigma. The issue is, do women's lives matter? No. Women's health a priority? No. And even after, 3 years into this pandemic, everything that COVID is showing us, we're actually degressing. I mean, now, obviously, with the loss of Roe, everything now is about that. And we have other issues, even though that's a bomb that was placed.
Well, that was my question. When I was like starting to really get into your book very deeply, I thought, okay, well, if we were having this interview in October when your book came out, right, we would be having one sort of conversation. And now it's like 6 weeks into the post-Roe world or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And there's a phrase I never really wanted to use, post-Roe. And how much more poignant and important your book is. The takeaway, one of the big takeaways from your book is that unfortunately, we right now have to be responsible for our own health. And we have now left women of color all across this country in a worse state than it was when your book was written initially. And that was how many months ago? Not that many months ago.
Almost 2 years ago. It came out last year, but it's a whole process. Not like making ice cream sandwich cookies, but a lot like putting the podcast together.
Exactly.
No, but also I think what's really important now is, it's sad. It's good and it's sad, but the book becomes more and more relevant. Like there was a period when we were editing, because the editing process when you write a book is so long. At one point I was like, hey, we got to move because these issues are going to be like over. And my editor was like, no, they won't. Oh, another thing about publishing is it's going to go the pace it's going to go. Okay.
Yeah. You're not changing that.
Publishing is slow like a turtle. But it's actually becoming more and more relevant. But the other really important thing is that I think American women really need to get is that what happens to us matters. What happens to women's rights and women's health in America matters, not just because everyone's going to look and be like, what the heck just happened? But because of US foreign policy, which is really, really powerful and very important. And so things like if Roe is overturned in the States, we're going to put that stuff into our policy, make it a contingent on aid, US aid that we give out. And once again, this is important, guys, because the US is the largest donor to global health. We are really powerful. I think we pay like 25% of the UN's bills, 40% donor to global health programs around the world. So it's not a joke. We will take, and we have been taking domestic abortion politics and, injecting them into our foreign policy and even having it implement and affect women's health and rights in countries where abortion is legal.
That's correct. And we've been doing it. I remember during the second George Bush era, or was it even the first George Bush era, where it was impacting the kind of aid that we gave to places like Africa, right? Where,
African countries suffer so much, but also because the U.S. is the largest purchaser of contraceptives, of condoms around the world. So it's just like the U.S. is just everywhere. So when their politics gets in, and they want to implement their domestic politics to influence how women are able to access safe legal abortion abroad, they can. And even though, it's such a contradictory situation to be in as a feminist, because you don't always want to talk about abortion, but then America has made it so that we're always only talking about this one aspect of women's health, because it's going to influence everything else.
Yeah. And
it's already happening. It's already happening in the States.
I try as much as possible not to use the word abortion, but instead talk about reproductive freedom.
Yeah,
because
we don't have that without abortion, right?
No. But it's all part of the process, is being able to make a decision about whether I want an abortion or whether I don't want an abortion, or whatever I want to do with, and I'm pointing downwards for all you people at home towards my uterus. For all the people playing at home, I'm pointing at my uterus. We want to have our own control over it.
Same thing women have been saying forever. I just think it's crazy. We've been saying this forever, right? We were saying it in the 50s, we were saying it in the 40s. We said it when we didn't have language for it. But now it's just crazy to me that I have two, American Muslim girls, daughters growing up in the States who are going to have less rights than we have back home. And everyone's like, creeping Sharia and crazy Muslims. Well, let me tell you, abortion is protected in Islam. So it's just so funny. Like all these, we have been monitoring and watching extremists, right, take away women's rights in other countries, and the whole time being like poo-poo.
Right.
And it's a big deal. It's
a huge deal. And you see these like lists of things that are happening. It's like taking away women's rights. Men should be in charge. What's taught in school should be controlled. And everyone goes, do you think this is the Taliban? No, it's not.
Yeah, no.
It's Mississippi, and
it's already happening, but you see how important women's health is, the politics of women's health. There's a reason there's these power struggles, right, that are centuries old, because we're so powerful and it's such a big power to determine your reproduction. And clearly it is. So I feel like now women's health is at a really big crisis point. And it's time for everybody to be involved. Like nobody, and the men too. I wrote an article last week for Newsweek and I was like, where are the men? Where are the men? They cause 100% of all unintended pregnancies. Okay. One man can get like 364 women, right, pregnant every year. But a woman can only get pregnant like once, right?
Right. And if he were a stray cat, we'd have him neutered, right? If he were a tomcat out in the yard. Sorry.
Yeah, so I just feel like we need our male allies now more than ever, because abortion benefits men too, economically, socially. The studies are that a man who has had an abortion, whose partner has had an abortion, is 4 times more likely to go to college, to have a more stable job. So this is the other thing. Everyone should be invested in women's health. No one is, but everybody has an opinion on abortion. Meanwhile, it's real women's lives that are stuck in the limbo. I mean, already we have this 10-year-old girl in Ohio can't get an abortion. Women who are miscarrying might be having to go to jail. I mean, this is happening right now. So
refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
There's no one like you, and there never will be.
From the producer of Bohemian Rhapsody, there are many legends, but there is only one. Michael, rated PG-13, in theaters April 24.
None of this is made up in fantasy anymore. These stories that I hear of people in emergency rooms where the doctors sort of pause and go, I'm sorry, I have to call my lawyer before I can see whether or not I can deal with your hemorrhaging or can give you this pill, or why I don't shop at Walgreens anymore, because they allow their pharmacists to let their religious views influence whether or not they're going to give you a condom or a morning after pill. Really?
Yeah.
That kind of goes to one of the things that your book is really good at bringing out, which is, I mean, you have a chapter, and that's the chapter that I read in bed before going to sleep, which was probably not, I should have read it in the daylight, but it's about it's these stories of women that you interviewed who have had horrendous experiences in hospitals, and it all comes down to racism and having to, in most cases, I mean, all of us, whoever we are, whatever we look like, have had as women experiences where we've been patted on the head.
Yeah.
But it is much more of an issue, this sort of impact of race that's killing women of color.
The interesting thing once I started, first of all, yes, you're right. But the interesting thing about once I started writing this book was all the other gaps that you discover when you start working or researching women's health. Mm-hmm. So yes, there's a pain gap. So women are really expected to have a really high threshold for pain. But then also nobody believes us when we say, this is really painful and I think something might be wrong. So we're kind of caught in this contradiction because there's a pain gap, there's a gender gap, there's a knowledge gap. There's serious lack of research in women's health that I feel like all women should be enraged about every day. Things aren't studied on women, not even female mice.
I know that was the thing. It's like they study women's drugs on male mice.
And I get it, and a lot of people say it's because it's easier, it's cheaper. Yes, our hormones complicate studies, but guess what? You can't just leave out 50% of the population. It has serious detriments to women's health and how and if you get a diagnosis. So there's a knowledge gap, a pain gap, then there's a credibility gap. Women are not believed, period, about our bodies.
Nope.
If we've been raped, if we're in pain, if we think something might be wrong with the baby, I mean, whatever it is. And you know what? 99% of the time, women are right. It's almost never, I mean, there's this myth about like these crazy hysterical women going to the doctor's office or the hospital and lying about our conditions. But let me just tell you something. Most women really don't have the time or desire.
Like,
maybe there's that one-off.
There's always a Mrs. Munchausen somewhere who's sending somebody else to the hospital for her, right? And then there are always a few of us hypochondriacs who are like, well, they have this spot and whatever. I get it, but we're all treated. I feel like so many of us, unless you have found that wonderful doctor wonderful doctor who can give you the time and listen to you. And that's why I think it's really important for women to share who their doctors are with other people.
This is the other thing. This is not like an anti-healthcare, anti-doctor, anti-medical world thing at all. But it is, there is a problem. There's a communication problem. And also, much like everything else in America, I mean, hospitals are businesses.
That's right.
We're the most litigious country in the world. Yeah, they would rather have you die than get a lawsuit. That's a big effing problem. Why have C-sections in America risen as our maternal mortality has been rising by 500%? That's a major surgery. We don't get any time off, no paid leave. Women are supposed to be, bouncing back with these major surgeries. I had 2, and there's always an emergency C-section situation. And then your kid's in NICU. I mean, we have created our own kind of business of giving birth, and it was never supposed to be this medicalized. But then if you read my book, and it's so fascinating because you think, hey, how did this happen? And it's like, oh, it happened very systematically. This is very organized. And I feel like COVID is really giving us a great opportunity to reimagine how we give birth in this country. Because right now, during a pandemic, I mean, ground zero is the hospital. Why are we sending women? Look at what we did to pregnant women, by the way, the first 2 years of the pandemic. It hasn't, you know, sending them in. You can't have your partner with you, making them give birth with masks. Granted, everybody was scared. Nobody knew what the heck was going on. But now we know more. And then we left pregnant women out of the early stage clinical trials for the vaccine, the most anticipated vaccine, even though we knew, you know, the virus is more dangerous in pregnancy, even though we knew 70% of healthcare workers are women. So it's so ironic to me that we are in so many ways responsible for taking care of everybody. And then really no one gives a crap about us.
That's the t-shirt. That's the t-shirt right there.
That is the t-shirt right there. But even like, I think every woman has this moment in her life, like maybe in her house, like I do everything and no one, it's actually happening on the political level too.
On a political level, our bodies are public property. And yet I go to see my doctor you can go to see a doctor and have no say over your person. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would actually start a level down from hospitals and start with the conglomos that are running the general healthcare on our day by day level. Like I don't go see a doctor. If my doctor isn't available, there are 25 other doctors that I can go see. And I don't get to really choose right away. I don't get to see doctor whatever. I get to have to see doctor whomever. And I really don't really want to see them, but nobody else is seeing them. Right. And they don't know me. They don't take an interest in me. And enough about me, because I want to talk about how women of color aren't also like, I can go in and I can be a big yammering Karen. Yeah. You know what I mean? But not all women have that privilege. Not all women have that healthcare available to them. And even when you have the best healthcare, the story that will never leave me is the story of the physician in Indiana, a female physician who is also a woman of color, who has COVID, who videos herself in the hospital. Nobody believed her.
Yeah.
What can you please tell the story to those who haven't read your book yet?
Talking about Dr. Sharon Moore, who was a physician herself, and they thought that this happens a lot actually, but they didn't believe her that how much pain she was in while she had COVID, and thought that she was trying to, you know, basically score some high level grade pain medication. But
that's what I like to do when I can't breathe. That's really like my number one goal.
This story, this accusation and this fear kept coming up. And this is what's so interesting about when race gets involved in it. Because I mean, I feel like when you're a woman of color, a white woman, no one's saying that these experiences don't happen to you. It's like, it's not race, it's sexist. Like for me, I have to be like, is this guy sexist or is he racist? Okay. Is he both?
Is he both?
Sometimes he will be both, because you're fighting gender stereotypes and then racial stereotypes too. I mean, there's this one Muslim woman that I interviewed in the book who was like, she felt like she really had to perform her pain. Like nobody was believing her and she was in labor. But she said to me, but how do I know? It's because I'm like this brown hijabi woman. Like, how do you measure these experiences? And that's why I always say you can't really intellectualize race. I mean, you can, but that's why these women's stories are so important. And then oftentimes we don't tell them to anyone because we know we're not going to be believed. But something that I have confirmed through this book, because I spoke to so many women and now I'm just obsessed with women's stories and what women don't talk about, but how powerful women's stories are and how every woman has a story. I mean, every woman has a story, Marissa. My next book is just going to be called Women's Stories. It's just unbelievable. And then when you start putting them together, then you see these patterns emerging that you're seeing Black and brown women having to deal with, even with sickle cell, that you're not trying to score pain medication, that you're not like a drug addict, Then you have like other women of color, Latinas. I mean, this is also obstetric violence is a big problem, not only in America, but my point is, this is why women's stories are so important. I mean, I started my research talking to women. We dismiss so much of women's experiences and their voices, but that is a big part of your research, your first person experiences, And I just feel like it's now more than ever, it's time for women to tell our stories and demand that you freaking listen to me.
And, that was, in a sense, the tell in the first sentence that you said, right, just as we were starting this conversation, which was, women all have these stories, they don't tell them. And why do you think that is? Is it because maybe I did something wrong when I went to the doctor? Maybe I'm not doing the right thing. I mean, also, many of us women inhabit a place of like, well, I could have done better. We're perfectionists. If I've only done it this way, then he would have listened to me.
Yeah. Well, we do this when we've been like sexually harassed or assaulted too. I mean, I do it. I'm like, did I do something wrong? Did I imagine that? I think we doubt ourselves a lot because we've been told that we're crazy and we're imagining it. Or maybe it's all in our heads. That's what I wanted to call the book, by the way.
It's all
No, all in your head. And then I wanted to call it hysterical because, oh my God, I mean, you don't understand. Men have been telling us that we've been imagining it for so long. I mean, Freud tried to make it like an actual.
Exactly.
He tried to like codify this crap. And can I tell you, it's been disproved. Okay. It's not real. It does not exist, but we still have these stories. I mean, just like 3 months ago in the Washington Post, this woman was like, I was having these migraines. Nobody was believing me. They freaking like removed a tumor from her head the size of a volleyball, which is, by the way, about like this big, but you have to Google this story. And she was a white woman. So we're all struggling, but it is another barrier. And by the way, pre-COVID, people would say really racist things. They'd be like, oh, America's maternal health crisis is because it's a Black problem, or because like Black people are less educated or Black women are welfare queens. And then now there's so many studies coming out. And this is another thing. Studies are coming out now that are backing what women have been saying. And also women of color have been saying that something is wrong. We're not believed. We're freaking being unnecessarily like induced, medicated, not having any say, gaslit. But now there's a study that says that a college educated Black woman, a Black woman who has college education or higher is 5 times more likely to die giving birth in America than her white counterpart with a high school degree. And then there was a study that came out in 2016 that said that most white doctors, over half of white doctors in America, still believe really racist medical theories, which have been disproven, that Black people don't experience pain the same, that Black people's nerve endings are thicker, they don't need opioids. And this leads to undertreatment for their pain, but also under prescription for opioids, which we're giving to white people. I mean, that is a white crisis right there. The opioid addiction. Only white people could do that, by the way. Go to the doctor and be like, here, have some codeine on me.
On me. Right. It's free today. Go on.
When you work in this field, you realize people really don't like to talk about race. Not people of color, by the way. People in positions of power. And we're not debating if racism really exists. Is racism systemic?
Wait, hold on. Let me think about that.
Yeah. But people are debating these things still. But you look at America's maternal health crisis, and Black women are.
But white people are debating that.
Yeah, exactly. But you look at the maternal health crisis, and Black women are 243% more likely to die giving birth in America. So even for those people who think racism is not a problem in America and we're post-race, you have to look at that statistic. You have to look at it and say, what is going on? And it's all connected, okay? It's connected to where you live. It's connected to the doctors you can access. I mean, I didn't know that in our DC neighborhood in the 50s, the redlining that they had, so Black people couldn't even live there. That is crazy. So it's not just like people who are like, oh, I get this a lot from my critics. You make everything about race and I'm like, in America, everything really is about race. It is.
I mean, the GI Bill redlining. I mean,
all of it
throughout history. I want to keep talking to you. We do a thing here where we pause for a moment and we move on to the bonus section for our fine subscribers to the Deep State Radio Network who get bonus content. In our bonus episode, Anushay and I discuss, among other things, how we can affect change for women in the United States and with our own doctors. Thank you so much to Anushay Hossain. You can find her book, The Pain Gap, wherever fine books are sold, or listen to it via Audible. It's about as important a book as you can read. You can also listen to her podcast, Spilling Chai, And thank you so much, the listener, for spending your time with us. I appreciate it with all my heart. You can follow me on my Substack at marissarothkopf.substack.com for all the recipes and extra content. Thank you, and stand up for one another out there. See you next week.
Pet owner, save this. TikTok has free training guides and behaviour tips, potty training, tricks, healthy diet ideas. No expensive classes needed. Just scroll and learn. Download TikTok now.